Live in a constant state of fear and misery.
What else is going on here with China?
Things
Things,
are going on with China. So, yeah, this is actually it's also to do with Facebook and Libra and that situation developing. But this is just like this is like the biggest vindication of my attitude towards Libra since it was concretely announced that I have seen yet. Wang Xin, the director of the People's Bank of China's research bureau, has been looking at Libra. And two key quotes I want to read are, if Libra is widely used for payments, cross-border payments in particular, would it be able to function like money and accordingly have a large influence on monetary policy, financial stability, and the international monetary system? And another thing that he was very much concentrating on and concerned with was Libra's plan to be backed by a currency basket and what role the US dollar would play in there. And his quote regarding this was, if the digital currency is closely associated with the US dollar, it could create a scenario under which sovereign currencies would coexist with a US dollar-centric digital currency. But there would in essence be one boss, that is the US dollar and the United States. If so, it would bring a series of economic, financial, and even political or international political consequences. And like this just goes to show how much of a perceived threat, just even the idea of Facebook doing something like this with the ability to bootstrap network effect that widely is just no. Like China is literally looking at this as a national security issue. And in between the lines saying that they would respond negatively to the United States itself if something like this were to happen, where the US dollar was a significant component of that currency basket. Like this, like just the idea of this happening has a superpower implicitly threatening political consequences with another superpower if this private company does this. Like this is not gonna happen. This air quote cryptocurrency is not going to launch. This is not going to happen. And these companies are going to get smashed for the million reasons governments have to lash out and smash them right now. Because this is literally like, you can argue, and I would argue, that Bitcoin is the type of threat that actually exists, that could actually happen and not be stopped to do things like this. But they can't do anything about it. They can't see anything to do about it. A lot of them might not even take it seriously. But just the idea of Facebook doing this has them reacting the way they would to Bitcoin if there wasn't that denial or that self-delusion. Like they're not going to allow this to happen because unlike Bitcoin, they can actually not allow this to happen.
Yeah, it's kind of funny how Facebook's Libra coin, like the biggest thing and impact it's having really is just like how much these governments are starting to take these seriously, where before they didn't really see it as, a threat to national security. But you have a company like Facebook who has, openly stated that they plan on influencing elections in the future. And the history has shown that they've done a good part of that in the past. And they've got 2.4 billion users. And if you start banking all those users and they believe the information that you're telling them, it shows this like level of pooled trust that could just up in your system that you've been running for a long time. And with Bitcoin, they don't really see that because they don't see the user base. And if they do, and they start digging into it, we know. I mean, the amount of Bitcoin users isn't like great in number of, the scale of 2.4 billion users, if that is the case. But I mean, like, this seems to be the thing everybody's frightened about. But it certainly is doing this job of giving governments a reason to go after the space with a level of force they didn't have before. And yeah, I mean, I don't really think it's going to happen either, because it's just going to be something that the governments will mostly want to nip in the butt before it ever starts. Unless you go to a government like Bahrain or something, and maybe they'll institute it and they'll say, like, yeah, like, we want the Libra currency.
I don't
I
see any rational government that would want to cede that kind of monetary power if they had a choice, which is why they're going to act with Libra, because unlike Bitcoin, here they have a choice.
I
and
believe there was also an article today or yesterday about India saying absolutely no, and Facebook is not planning to launch Libra in India.
Yeah, I mean, it's not that. Yeah, we do have a story about India, but it's not that particular one. I mean, that's what I'm saying. It's like we've seen governments react. I mean, like, we do have a story coming up in just a couple about the ECB where they're reacting too. I mean, people see that number of users and they start to think about, that level of value exiting their system. If, like, let's say you're in country X and, like, your population, like, half is Facebook users, and then Facebook says they're going to bank half your population. It's, well, then now you're going to take it real seriously. And yeah, that's what's happening across the spectrum with different countries and Facebook's announcement of this.
but let's stop a little bit here, because what China is afraid about is actually American domination through Libra, and Bitcoin is different. It's not a US domination of the financial system. It's more decentralized and democratic in that way, that you cannot just put it into one country. Hey, if this thing would be to take off, then the US or then that country would be profiting from it much more than my country. You know what I mean? So I think that's a big difference there.
Yeah, I mean, that's where I think, we saw the reaction to Bitcoin the way it was. I mean, it wasn't this level of, like, we need to create our own because, like, this is an inevitability. They were still just looking at it as, like, something that they wanted to experiment with and figure out how exactly it worked and what they could do to, sort of steer it in a direction that they wanted. But yeah, I mean, this is an open source space where, I mean, like, if Twitter tomorrow said they wanted to institute something, I mean, then they're going to do it, or, Facebook or whoever. And so, yeah, these things move a lot faster than these governments. And, if they could provide an efficiency for a lot of people that they don't have without that sort of thing, then you could see a lot of that population move over. And, with that goes a lot of, like, your ability to control that population. So yeah, it's definitely a big macro problem. But yeah, you guys have some more stuff on this?
No, it's just like this is corporations trying to go to war with governments when all the guns, the meme power, the belief in actual authority is all in the hands of the governments. Like, that's just retarded. They're literally retarded.
Wait, the meme power is in the hands of the government? I've never known a government to
Yes,
be
as
very
in,
good at
like,
memes.
more people believe in the legitimacy of a government to do shit and dictate shit than a corporation by a landslide.
Well, actually, I watched a YouTube video a while ago, which was actually trying to figure out what if Jeff Bezos would be able to rule the world or not. And it it seemed like he would have a pretty good chance of doing world domination. So, but I will refresh my memories. That what was the exact reasoning there? So, for
The
example,
retard-
one is that they control. It's not the government who controls the information anymore. Not really Facebook, not really companies, but they could have more control than government, for example.
it's it's just that's not the reality right now, no para. And like this is just purely objectively stepping back and looking at this as an impartial chess game. This was just a retarded move.
For fuck's
It
sake,
was
you
retarded.
are in the Middle East for 10 years now and can't even get rid of ISIS, like that's how ineffective your guns are,
Yes, it is so good.